Delayed. Oh, yeah, I see. Well, they're still going to have to clean the plane and refuel. Oh, man. I thought I was not going to make it. I got held up at security, special screening. I guess that's what you get coming from Zarov City and heading back to the United States. A little extra attention. Oh, man. Oh, these shoes. I love them, but they're my power shoes, my confidence shoes. Very uncomfortable. Torture, in fact. Well, torture. Nothing compared with what I've been listening to these past 2 days. Yeah, Zarov City. I testified at Karasy's trial. I thought that I was going to stay around a few days, wait for the verdict of the International Tribunal, but I could not take it anymore. As soon as my part was over, I just went straight to the airport, took the first flight out, didn't even take time to change. Yeah. In what capacity? Well, I'm a therapist. Well, I was a therapist back in Satori Police. Now I teach at Eastern Connecticut State University. Yeah, I had clients who managed to escape Karasy's regime, but then later committed suicide. Yeah, several years later, they just killed themselves. It's not unusual. It's the survivors' guild that Rudestam and Lawrence Calhoun have written about. Well, think of the Italian writer Primo Levi, who survived the Holocaust, and then in 1987, he just committed suicide. Well, I know, it was a fall, but really, it was suicide. Or think of Zahir Hamani's father, who was a Harki during the Algerian War. And in 1962, when Algeria proclaimed its independence, and when the victors decided to get rid of the traitors and massacred the Harki, he survived somehow. Found himself in prison. In 1962, escaped prison, made his way to France, and then in 1991, almost 30 years after the massacres, he committed suicide. Yeah, his daughter wrote a beautiful novel about it. It's called Moz, M-O-Z, brilliant. But yeah, so I was called to bear witness for my clients. Although, as Giorgio Agamben pointed out, the true witnesses are those who perished in the camps. The survivors are only pseudo-witnesses. There are no true witnesses to such acts. No, you're right. Yeah, Zarov City was not a genocide, and Zarov and Karasy were no Hitler. Although, when he took power, Zarov decided to change the name of the country. It became Zarov City, like Stalin did with Tsaritsyn, that became Stalingrad. And he also proclaimed himself great guide, like Mao Zedong was China's great helmsman. Or like François Duvalier, Papa Doc in Haiti, made sure that his son, Jean-Claude, Baby Doc, would take over. Zarov appointed Karasy Minister of the Interior and Justice, and the rumor was that Karasy was Zarov's bastard son. So, yeah, you're right, it was different. And it's true also that Zarov and Karasy didn't try to exterminate part of their population like Pol Pot did in Cambodia in the 70s, but it was a full-fledged totalitarian regime like Ne Win's Burma or Pinochet's Chile or Ceausescu's Romania. Totalitarian, yeah, not dictatorial nor authoritarian, by Hans Buheim's definition. Zarov was not a dictator in the sense that he was not elected and vested with actually unlimited powers because of special times. And following Hannah Arendt, it was not an authoritarian regime in the sense that its aim was not to limit people's freedom, but really to abolish it. No, Zarov City was the textbook case of a totalitarian regime with posters, with lists of prohibitions and obligations. Just wait, I do have such a poster. One of my clients gave it to me. Look at that. Yeah, list, prohibited, compulsory. It is prohibited to be out from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. Violators will be summarily executed. To demonstrate, demonstrators will be executed. To offend the great guide, the supreme leader who rules with discernment for his subjects' sake, any slanderer will appear in front of an exceptional tribunal. To write to expatriates who circulate false information against the great guide. It's compulsory to report acts that contravene the rules. Any important initiative must be first authorized by the administration. To wear distinctive social signs, scarlet or indigo ribbon, black knot. Well, doesn't that remind you of something? To report any unusual behavior. Those in the know of disloyalty against the great guide will be tried for high treason. To serve the state before one's own interests and to report one's parents' breach in civic duty. They basically made the kids spy on their parents. To renounce one's parents and worship the great guide, the father of all Zorovians. It's actually what Kim Jong-un does in North Korea. To obey the prescriptions from the Minister of Interior and Justice, who is vested with absolute power and can question any potential agitator. Well, with the last one, Karasi made sure that he could do whatever he pleased. So if this is not totalitarianism, you tell me what is. What's that? Oh, that's a list of all the aspects of that totalitarian regime that I made for myself, you know, for the trial. Listen to this. Zarov City was cut off from other nations, like Kim Jong-un's hermit nation. Electrified barbed wires, curfew, and safe conducts limited people's freedom of movement. Existence of one truth, the states. Cult of personality. Well, I already talked about Zarov, but it was the same thing with Karasi. He was constantly surrounded with courtiers and flatterers. He was like a sun king. You know, it was pure Karasilatry. Control of radio and press, of course, with ideological overkill. And when you have such a gigantic propaganda apparatus, it's very easy for a regime to make people think that they truly, freely adhere to the leader's beliefs and ideas, that they're not coerced. Denial of history, since everything started with Zarov and his regime. Heavy taxation and pitiful salaries, well, to impoverish people, to famish them, and this way they spend all their physical, intellectual energy just trying to put food on the table. People had to practice self-criticism and report any illegal behavior. Questionings and torture sessions were filmed and widely broadcast to maintain the population in a state of fear, of despair, to deter them from rebelling. And those who rebelled were purged or killed or made an example of, like that professor whose body was left to rot in one of the pathways of the university, or that old man who was suspected of trying to kill one of Karasi's men with a shoelace, strangling him with a shoelace. His body was hung from a jeep and dragged over several kilometers. Or Verona, who was only 17, but the daughter of a felon militiaman. She was questioned, tortured. She endured 48 hours of torture, and eventually she confessed to everything and anything that they wanted her to. Yeah. Eventually the soldiers just stabbed her to death. And in the end, they cut up her body and gave it to eat to Karasi's dogs. Yeah, appalling is an understatement. Karasi controlled the masses by blowing hot and cold on them. So he would give his henchmen free rein to rape, loot, burn, torture, anything. And then he would turn around and order a week-long of joyful celebrations. As Lindale puts it, coaxing and hurting are the ABCs of the art of governing. And I'm not going to even go into these abusive imprisonments, summary executions, quick fake trials, nor in the indoctrination of the youth, not just at the university level, but even, you know, like high school and middle school. And violence in every shape and form. So when I hear intellectuals like Domenac say that the state is an organized violence, or philosopher Yves Michaud say that violence is everywhere and has multiple shapes, or the sociologist Michel Cornaton says that there's violence because aggressiveness lies at man's heart. Granted, he does say that it's 30 times higher in autocracies than in democracies, but still, I'm beside myself. Or take Michèle Vivorka. Vivorka says that violence is both subjective and objective. What's perceived as violence depends on the time period and the place. Well, let me tell you something. In Zarov City, violence was anything but subjective. And of course, women wore the brunt of it, and that's nothing new. Oh, did you read that book by Elisha Dacker about Uganda and Idi Amin? I brought it for the trial. Wait, I have it right here. In Idi Amin's Shadow, Women, Gender and Militarism in Uganda. Dacker sees a correlation between hypermasculinity and gendered violence. Let me just read you a quick part of it. Many Ugandan women experience the violence of state collapse through rape. Agents of the hyper-masculine military state use sexual violence to demonstrate their power over women. In addition, they violated women's bodies to emasculate or humiliate those men who were unable to protect them. By the mid to late 1970s, violence against women had reached an unprecedented level. And she adds, as threats to the military state intensified, gender-based violence became increasingly common. She has a point. That's true also of Zarov City. And there were threats to that military state. There were posters that showed up, surreptitiously on buildings. There were smugglers who helped Zarovians escape, like my patients did. There were leaflets circulating under the cloak. High school students burnt Karassi's effigy. Suicide bombers detonated their explosives as Karassi's car was passing by, and actually once a bomb was put under his car. And what did Karassi do? He just tightened his grip. Yeah, just tightened his grip. Yeah, there was no way of doing anything, The printer of the leaflets, he had him guillotined. Rodinsky, who led 100 insurgents, guillotined too. How did he fall? His wife, Una. Well, his wife, she really only married him because he threatened to have her father killed, and her father, he was a very famous scientist, and he also threatened to have her brother left at the hands of his men. So she married him. You see, with her, the violence was very different from the other violence that he did against women, right? It was not violence done, but violence threatened. This is something that Jeff Hearns wrote about. But some events made Una switch from resentment mode to rebel mode. She makes me think of Albert Camus' Rebel. What events? Well, first there is Marco, a 10-year-old boy who found his way into the palace and became friends with Una. Karassi killed him, alone, by himself. And like Antigone, Una defied Karassi's orders and buried Marco in the gardens of the palace. And then there is the fact that she found herself pregnant with the child of the famous resistant ex. So, yeah, that was it. Yeah, Una makes me think of Albert Camus' Rebel. She would be like the counterpart, the female counterpart of the rebel. I rebel, therefore we are, could be Una's cogito. Yeah, but she was found out. Well, more precisely, she was given away, and she could not kill Karassi as planned. But her aborted revolt just bore its fruit in the end. She got executed, and her execution was the beginning of the revolution and the end of Zarov's and Karassi's regime. Which brings me here. Yeah, Una. You've not heard about Una, but you must have heard about Karassi's trial. It's everywhere in the news. Yeah, you have. You see, Karassi's fate is interesting, this totalitarian regime. It really supports what Boheim has said about totalitarian rule. He says that it can never be perfect because it aims at the impossible. You can never completely control a person's fate, an individual's personality. Right? Well, in any case, if you're interested in Karasis and Una's story, you should read Linda Lay's Kronos. Do you know Linda Lay's Kronos? Oh, I brought it too. Linda Lay, you know her? No, well, she's from Vietnam. She was a child during the Vietnam War. And she clearly remembers seeing corpses by the roadside as her family made their way from Dalat to Saigon. She was about 5. I think it was during the Tet Offensive in '68. And she has a very, very vivid memory of that man that was reading that book, you know, and that didn't pay attention, and that was shot by a soldier because he was so engrossed in his book that he violated the curfew. He forgot about the curfew and violated it just because he was reading. This is actually the very first scene of Kronos. So yeah, she put a little bit of her own experience with totalitarianism in this novel. Yeah, you should read it. It's good, and it's rare that Francophone women write about totalitarian rule. Oh, boarding time. Oh, well, that was very nice talking to you. Oh, but I just realized I didn't get your name. Scholastic Mukasonga? The Scholastic Mukasonga, who lost 27 members of her family in the Rwandan genocide and wrote Cockroaches?